I can't use this saw indoors. It is way too dusty. If you own this saw, you probably know what I'm talking about. Now, typically compound miter saws have a dust collection problem, especially if they're a slide saw. It's a difficult issue to solve. But this saw is on a whole other level. This one includes dust spreading technology. This is not going to be an easy one. It's going to be really difficult to outfit something that works properly and works all the time as well, no matter what position it's in and no matter what size of lumber we're putting in here to cut as well. So by the end of this video, we should have a proper solution that works for anybody that you can download yourself for free and print it for your own saw to help you with dust collection. So let's get into it. If you didn't catch the previous video, I will put it up in the top corner there. But basically, we did a full restoration, but we 3D printed this 100% solid. And these guys we 3D printed as well. They are PETG. So check out that video if you haven't already seen it. But now we want to focus on the dust collection. Just one part, but a very important part. You can see here, this is all that it has. Just this port here. And the vac hose can connect to here. So in order to figure out what we need to do to solve this problem, we need to make some dust. We're gonna get some slow-mo video and see if we can figure out what is happening with this dust in order to try and capture it better. I have some lights from behind. I'm gonna turn the overhead lights off. I think that's gonna give us a better idea of where the dust is going. And next, very important step, plug in the saw. I should mention I don't have the shop vac attached, and part of the reason for that is because I want to see in from the back, but it didn't actually seem to do anything the last time either. What I really want to find out is what is the natural path of the sawdust and what do we need to do to try and collect it. Just watching back the video, and it looks like some of the sawdust is coming up through the port. But a lot of it is not, and you can actually see it's still floating in the air here. The dust has all settled. Unfortunately, the first video I took had my arm in the way, but you can really see how the sawdust is just spreading all over the place. It almost seems impossible what's happening here, when the blade's really going to want to shoot the sawdust out pretty much straight off of the back. It's not making a lot of sense at the moment. One way to get better dust collection is to bring the saw all the way out and begin the cut before you enter the material. This is the worst case scenario, starting pretty much horizontal, diving into the top of the material. It's going to send it more or less straight back. You can see what's happening there. The beginning of the cut starts really low, and as we get deeper and deeper, it's rising up. And finally, by the end of the cut, it's pretty much at where the dust board is. Rising up, and then you see it's hitting just where the bearings are too. That's terrible. So there's going to be sawdust wanting to get into where the bearings are, and then it's hitting this area too. So we need to bring something that's going to come down far enough that it can capture the sawdust even at the beginning of a cut like that. Time for some cleanup. Now the tough part is, what do we have to work with? We want to be able to cut maybe a 2x6 up to possibly a 6x6. I don't know if this saw can handle it or not. So a 2x6, we will begin the cut maybe somewhere around here. Not way out here. If we did, we don't have any room. As long as we keep it far enough back, we should be okay. And if we cut something on the flat and it's going to be deeper, we're going to start way out here. and work our way back, and we have quite a bit of clearance there. If we're cutting a 6x6, it might be difficult, so maybe the possibility of removing or adjusting it would be a good idea in that case, but that is, I think, pretty rare. So I'd like to start simple with a cardboard template. That way we can test some ideas first before we move on to something a little bit more elaborate. Just need to glue these parts together. Pretty ugly, but I think it'll do the trick. I did put some duct tape on the inside just to smooth it out a little tiny bit. And I've got this section here just because I need to guide it into that port a bit better too. So just some duct tape holding it on for now on both sides. And it does wrap around the outside of the blade guard. I'm not going to connect the vacuum yet. I just want to see what's going to happen with the dust naturally. Does it want to shoot out the back now? This time I have the shop vac connected, and we'll give that a try. This did a really good job both starting off of the piece and starting into the piece too. Initially it was kind of coming up and hitting against here, not being collected very well, but when I got into the cut a little bit deeper, it seemed to want to go up the chute here. And of course with the shop vac attached, it worked way better. And for a cardboard version that doesn't really do a good job of directing it up the dust chute, it wasn't too bad. And of course at the angle it does work too. So I think we can do quite a bit better with a 3D printed version. So what I'm going to do is 3D scan this, and I want the position of this cardboard too in the angle. This is coming down too far, so I do need to address that. And I don't want this to be hard. I want it to be something flexible too. So we're going to need to come up with an idea for that too. So I'm going to do a 3D scan, but I've done a lot of videos showing how I go about doing that. So if you're interested, check out the link up there above. Otherwise, I'm going to skip ahead right into Fusion and show you what I've come up with. So I've been experimenting with a couple of different ideas, and this is what I've come up with. Maybe not ideal because we're working around an existing machine. It's obviously better if you can design it from the beginning with all this in mind. And I've been able to get this piece that's supposed to fit through. And the way that we do that is by having a cutout. So this will allow it to be flexible. We're going to print it with TPU, not TPU for AMS in this case, just regular TPU or high flow TPU. And it should come in towards itself, push through and kind of snap back in place or expand back out and stay in position more or less. So I'm going to get this printed in TPU, and then we'll take a look at how it fits or whether it fits on the machine. Fairly flexible. I think this is actually going to work. So it fits right through here. So that actually fits pretty nicely. I probably could improve this a little bit so it snaps into place a little bit better, but it does show that working with the mesh can result in a pretty good fit. So we've got just a tiny gap around the outside. I've already pre-cut a piece of rubber that I just had hanging around my shop. I don't know if this is the final solution. I just wanted to experiment. Ideally, the entire thing would be 3D printable. The CA glue has set enough for me to handle this, and I did use a heat gun just to reform these to be a bit more crisp on the corners. So now we can get it into the saw and give it a test. It is adaptable to my regular 2.5-inch shop vac hose. I don't think it looks too bad as a prototype. I do think that this could be a little bit better fit to lock it into place over on the side. So let's get some backlighting behind here. I know you guys are going to want me to do one without the vacuum attached, so I will do that. At the very beginning of the cut, when it was traveling mostly horizontal, it was hitting the side and bouncing off. Some of that was being captured because we had the vacuum going, and some of that was bouncing off a little bit. So not perfection, but it's also not bad. At least it wasn't being sent back this way, wasn't going up into the spring, and definitely not going to go back into the bearings like it was before. So now we'll do a test without the vacuum attached. So here is our progression. We have a cardboard template, which worked okay for what it was. We moved on to a TPU, mostly 3D printed solution, working prototype with a little bit of rubber on there as well, super glued together. This has a couple cool features. This little flap here, which extends down and allows it to pick up some of that sawdust, and allows it to pick up some of that sawdust from the very beginning of the cut, which this one did not do. And then we have the final prototype, final version. One feature is that the end piece here is screwed on and it is replaceable. You can either 3D print that part, so this will be available as well. This is from TPU, so it's got that flexibility. It has that little extension at the bottom. Or I will provide a template and you can cut your own. So this one is printed from PETG, and I'm not necessarily recommending PETG, although I do want to try to get this in there. The reason I did it was because I don't have orange TPU. I only have yellow TPU. So what I'm going to do to try and get this into the saw and actually see what it looks like as a more final product is I'm going to warm the end of this up just so that it's a bit more flexible. Then I'll try and expand it back out. Well, that actually worked way better than I was thinking. It came through just the right amount. So I should be able to screw on the rubber, and we'll see how that actually works. And of course it also works if we are going to set a bevel. This one's 45 degrees. The technique that seems to work the best with the PETG is to heat it up with the heat gun just to the point where it's malleable, push it through very quickly, and then put a bit of outward pressure on it to return it to the original shape. then you can just screw this in place and everything is pretty much held in position. It can't go anywhere now. I prefer the PET G because this end is not going to be as flexible as it would be if it were TPU, giving us a lot more options at this end, and this isn't going to flop out if you have just a hose connected directly into here. If this is something that you want to do for your saw, I will put links down there below for everything that you need, including a PDF of the template with the holes in it. We're going to have a file for this if you want to print it from TPU as well, and we'll have a file for the PET G piece, or that can be printed in TPU as well if that's easier. I also created an adapter for this end, and it should fit in there pretty tight, but if it's not too tight, it can be glued in as well. And that allows us to connect to one of these dust collector hoses. This is 2.5 inch with a magmate connection from a couple videos ago that we created. I will also include a link to these little tiny black plastic screws, which I think look really good. If this ever gets torn, if it ever gets worn down, or if we want to change the size, we can easily replace this piece without having to replace the whole thing. The other thing is that this rubber can be flexed and turned right inside out. The rubber I've used here is kind of like a recycled rubber. It's a little bit crumbly. I'm not sure it's the best choice for this, but it seems to be working at least for now. If you're enjoying this type of content, make sure you like the video and subscribe. It really helps to keep content like this coming strong. And also thank you to each of my patrons for supporting the channel and making these videos possible. Thanks for watching. Take care, and we'll see you on the next one.